Resimus Inflorescence continues. It is a non-stop process until the life cycle of the plant terminates or it ends. If the flowers can be divided into two equal halves in different planes, then it is considered to be radial symmetry. Arrangement of the petal is called as estivation, or the arrangement of the corolla. Corolla means nothing but it is another name for petal. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 5, that is Morphology of Flowering Plants. I'm Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session, we had studied about the parts of the flower in general, and also we studied the different types of arrangement of the leaves, that is the phyllotaxy of the leaves. And also we studied about the modifications that occur in the root, the modifications that occur in the stem and all that. In today's session, we shall study about the flower, which is the main reproductive part of the plant. So in the flower, based on the arrangement of the petals, based on the arrangement of the Andressium, the Gynoecium, all that, the flowers are classified into different types. What are those? We shall study. So, based on inflorescence. So, what is this inflorescence? In a plant, there will be a single flower. But some of the plants in which one main stalk will be present, and in that stalk, tiny numerous flowers will occur. That group of flowers is called as, occurring in one particular stalk is called as the inflorescence. So, based on the arrangement or the position in which the flowers are placed in an inflorescence, they are divided into two types. Or in other words, I can say based on the arrangement of flowers on the floral axis. So, this is the floral axis and how the flowers are arranged on a floral axis. So, if I say a flower is solitary or in a floral axis, on the pedicel only one flower is present, then there is no particular arrangement for the flower. But here in the case of inflorescence, since numerous flowers, more than one or two flowers will be present, I can consider the arrangement of the flowers. So, when I take in the arrangement of the flowers on the floral axis, there are two types. One is Resimus Inflorescence and the other one is the Zygomorphic Inflorescence. So, in Resimus Inflorescence, what happens here is the main axis. So, this is the main axis of the flower. So, on the main axis, the numerous small flowers will be located. So, at what position? So, in the case of Resimus inflorescence, what happens here is the main axis will continue to grow. It is a continuous growth. So, again here one more numerous flower, one more small flower will occur. Again the axis will continue. Again one more. Again the axis will continue. Again one more flower. Like this, it keeps on continuing until the life cycle of the plant ends. So, that is nothing but racemose. So, the main axis will continue to grow and the flowers will be borne laterally, that is towards the sides of the axis, they will be borne laterally. They will arise or they will grow laterally towards the side of the main axis, and they are in acropetal succession. So, what is acropetal? Remember, when the term acropetal comes, I had also told you acropetal arrangement of leaves, right? So, there what happens? The older leaves will be present at the base and the younger leaves will start developing after that, right? So, similarly here also, in the case of Resimus inflorescence, the first formed flowers, they will mature fast, they will wither fast or they will age fast, right? So, these will be the older flowers. So, in acropetal arrangement, the older flowers will be at the base and the younger ones are still forming. So, the younger ones will be at the top. So, these newly formed, those flowers which will form new, no, they will become the newly formed flowers or the young flowers, newly formed flowers. So, here on the main axis will continue to grow until the life cycle of the plant comes to an end, and when the axis is growing, on the main axis, on the lateral side of the main axis, the flowers will start to develop. And those flowers which are at the base will always be older flowers because they would have developed first. And those flowers which are at the tip will be the younger flowers because they are still in the developing stage or they are newly formed. That is why. So such kind of inflorescence wherein the main axis continues to grow and the flower are borne laterally on the main axis and having an acropetal arrangement. So what is an acropetal succession or an acropetal arrangement? The older flowers will be succeeded by the new flowers. That is, the older flowers will be at the base and above the older flowers at the tip of the axis, the young flowers will start to arise. So that is nothing but acropetal succession. So this is racemose inflorescence. So apart from the racemose inflorescence, based on the arrangement of the flower on the floral axis, so here also this will be the floral axis. So floral axis, it is the main stalk on which the flowers arise. So here this will be the main floral axis. So on the floral axis, the flowers will be arranged. But one main difference between the racemose inflorescence and the cymose inflorescence is that racemose inflorescence continues. It is a non-stop process until the life cycle of the plant terminates or it ends. But in the case of cymose inflorescence, the floral axis will terminate in a main flower. Can you see? Here there is no main flower at the tip. That is why it keeps on growing and laterally the flowers will start to develop. But in this case, the main axis will end with a flower at the tip. Can you see here? So this growth is stopped. Now, again the flowers have to grow, right? So at that time what happens? Lateral branches will be developed on the main axis and then the other flowers will start to grow. And also here it is basipetal order of flower arrangement. So here what happens? The older flower, so the main axis first it will form, then the older flower will form. Again from the main axis branches will occur like this. Lateral flowering will start. This will also be old flowers. These are all old flowers now. But again here also new flowers will be formed and again one more new flowers will start to form. So therefore at the lower end new flowers will be there. New flowers at the older or at the lower end or at the base of the main axis and the old flowers will be at the apical position or at the tip of the main axis. So therefore it is called as basipetal arrangement. So remember acropetal arrangement, the younger flowers were present at the tip and the older flowers will be present at the base. But in the case of basipetal arrangement, on the main axis the older flowers will be present at the tip and the younger flowers will arise from the base. So that is basipetal arrangement. So this is one of the important difference between the racemose and the cymose inflorescence. So therefore based on the arrangement of the flowers on the floral axis, the inflorescence can be of two types, that is racemose inflorescence and cymose inflorescence. And based on whether the inflorescence is racemose or cymose, the categorization of the flowering plants, that is the angiosperms, will be done. So this is about racemose and cymose. So next, moving on to the flower in general. So we studied about the inflorescence. Now I'll talk about the flower. So flower is usually solitary. Inflorescence, they are in groups. So they usually occur in groups. So when I talk about flower, we shall first study the different parts of the flower. It is very important to know, if we need to know the position of the calyx, where the petal is there, how the andressium is arranged, how the gynoecium is arranged, if all that we need to learn, first we need to know the different parts of a flower. So we shall start with studying the parts of a flower. So the flower, actually it is made up of 4 whorls. Apart from that, they can also be made up of 2 whorls or 1 whorl or 5 whorls, and it depends. So depends on the plant species, which we'll study about that in the coming slides. So starting with the parts of the flower. So the flower has a pedicel or the stalk of the flower. So it has a pedicel. So the pedicel, or it is also called as the stalk of the flower. Remember, like how leaves had a petiole, right, which holds the leaf to the branch, which fixes the leaf to the branch. It had a petiole. Just like that, or the stalk of the leaf is nothing but the petiole. Just like that, in a flower, the pedicel actually holds the flower to the main branch of the plant. So it is called as the pedicel or the stalk of the flower. Pedicel or stalk. So next, after the pedicel and the stalk, there is the presence of the calyx. So calyx, it is also called as the sepals. These are the calyx, or in other terms, it is also called as sepal. So the calyx or the sepal, so calyx, then comes the corolla. So I'll talk about the thalamus later on. So next we have the calyx or the sepal. So the calyx or the sepal, they are usually green in color. So you can see here, they are most of the time green in color. But apart from that, sometimes the calyx will appear colored and it will look as if it is fused with the petal. Such type of structure is called as the perianth. So perianth is also one more term that is there usually in champaka flowers, that is Magnoliaceae members, no, Magnoliaceae family. In champaka flowers, you might have observed like yellow color, just a little bit of light yellow than the flower, a light yellow leaf-like structure will be seen. So that doesn't look neither like a petal nor like a sepal. That is why they have termed it as perianth. So perianth is also one of the important parts of a flower which is present in some of the species or some of the families of the angiosperms or the flowering plants. So coming back to the sepals. So sepals, they are usually green and they are also leaf-like. So therefore, they are green because they have the chlorophyll pigment. So therefore, they also help in the process of the photosynthesis. And not just that, these sepals, they actually protect the bud. So you know that when a flower is in the bud form, it is very fragile. So if the flower in the bud condition has to be protected, then it will be covered by the sepal. So you might have seen the rosebud, the hibiscus bud and all that, it will be covered like a green leaf-like structure, right? So that is nothing but the sepal. So these sepals also protect the young buds or the flowers during the bud stage. So that is why sepals are very, very important and they are usually green in color. So next, after the calyx or the sepal, there comes the petal. So this petal is also called as corolla. So corolla, or in other terms, it is also called as the petal. So here, corolla. So corolla is also called as the petal, and when compared to the calyx, the corolla is larger and it is brightly colored. So why it is brightly colored? Because in order to attract the insects. Why? Because if the flower has to continue its next life cycle, then pollination is very, very important. So if pollination has to occur, the flower should be brightly colored so that insects will feel like going and sitting on it. So that is why it is very, very brightly colored in order to attract the insect. Not just that, the corolla also produces a sweet, pleasant smell or a scent, so that it attracts the insects to come and sit on it or feed on the nectar, therefore facilitating or helping in pollination process. So therefore, corolla or petal, they are the next part. It is usually large and they are brightly colored. After the corolla, we have the male reproductive part. So it is called as the andressium. It is very easy to remember. Andressium, androgen. Androgen is a hormone that is present in the male, right? So therefore here andressium means something related to the male in the case of flower. So it is easy to remember that way. So andressium is the male reproductive part of the flower. So this andressium, it consists of two main parts. We shall study about it one by one later on. So andressium, or in other words, it is called as the stamen. So it is also called as the stamen. So stamen is also very, very important because the pollen grains will actually be produced in this particular structure, that is the andressium or the stamen. So therefore, for reproduction, you know that pollen grains is very, very important in the case of a flower. So next, moving on to the next part, that is the gynoecium. So gynoecium is actually the female reproductive part of the flower, and it is also called as the pistil, or also it can be called as the carpel. Pistil or carpel. So it is the female reproductive part of the flower in which the ovule is being present. Just like how in females we have the ovary wherein the ovules will be present, right, which is nothing but the egg. Just like that in the flower also, in the female reproductive part, which is called as the gynoecium, which consists of the stigma. So gynoecium is made up of the stigma. So we'll study in detail later on. It is made up of stigma and also ovary, which has a cavity inside which the ovules are being present, and these ovules actually they fertilize with the pollen grain, forming the new seeds, and those seeds are the next generation, will be helpful in producing the next generation of plants or the new progenies or the offspring of the plant. So these are the parts of the flower. So therefore, flowers in general, they are usually made up of 4 or 5 whorls. So the outer whorl will be the calyx or the sepal. Inner to the corolla and the petal, there is the stamen or the andressium, and innermost to the andressium is the gynoecium or the pistil or the carpel. So these are the different parts of the flower. So next, moving on to, so andressium we have finished, gynoecium and thalamus. So what is this thalamus or receptacle? So thalamus or receptacle forms a bed or a base or a stage for different organs of the flower. So somewhere here the thalamus will be situated. So this thalamus, it is a disc-like structure which actually forms a bed. So from the thalamus, the sepals, the stamens, the corolla, the gynoecium, all arises from the thalamus. So thalamus is the region which actually holds all the other parts of the flower in place. So therefore thalamus, it is also called as receptacle. So thalamus is also called as receptacle. So therefore if they ask what is thalamus receptacle, it is one and the same. It means actually it is the base of the flower which holds all the other different parts of the flower, or it is the region of the flower from which all the other different parts of the flower arises. So that particular region is called as the thalamus or the receptacle. So next, after completing with the different parts of the flower, we shall study now based on the reproductive organs, how many types of flowers are there. So what are the reproductive organs that I told you? The reproductive organ is the andressium. So andressium is the male reproductive organ, and then comes the gynoecium. So gynoecium is the female reproductive organ. So in a flower, based on whether the andressium is present, whether the gynoecium is present, or whether both are present, based on that the flowers, they are of 2 important types, that is bisexual flowers and unisexual flowers. So what are these? We shall see. So bisexual flowers, as the name itself says, bisexual, 2 sexes are present there. That is 2 sexual organs will be present there. So what are the sexual organs I told you in a flower? They are the andressium, that is the stamens, and the gynoecium, that is the pistil or the carpel. So can you see here in this particular flower, the pistil is present, that is the female reproductive part, pistil is present, and also the stamen is present. So both the male reproductive part and the female reproductive part, if they are present in the same flower, then it is called as bisexual flowers. And on the other hand, in unisexual flower, again here uni means one, single. So here either the male reproductive part may be present or the female reproductive part may be present. So I'll just show you here. Say for example, here this particular part is not there. This part is not there and only the anthers are present. It is unisexual flower. Again, this is also unisexual, having only the male reproductive part, that is the andressium. Gynoecium I have just removed, it is not there. So those flowers having only the male reproductive part without the female reproductive part will also be called as unisexual flower. Why? Because here only one sexual character is present in the flower, or only one sex is present in the flower, that is the anther, which is the male reproductive part. Again here I'll remove the male reproductive part, all this in a flower will not be there, and only the female reproductive part will be there. Again, here also only one sex is present, or only one sexual organ is present in the flower, that is the gynoecium or the carpel, so they are the pistil. So therefore this flower is also unisexual. So unisexual flowers have either only stamen or only the carpel. Both like the bisexual flower, both the carpel and the stamen will not be present in one flower itself. They will either only the stamen will be present, or only the pistil or the carpel will be present. So this is about the unisexual and the bisexual flowers. Now again, depending on whether the flowers are bisexual or unisexual, the classification or the categorization of the flowering plants into different groups will be done. So the types of flowers can also be classified based on the symmetry. So what is a symmetry? If you remember chapter Animal Kingdom, I had told you about the radial symmetry and the bilateral symmetry. So in animals, how the animals can be cut into two equal halves, and also they can be cut into equal halves in different planes, or they cannot be cut into two equal halves. All that is nothing but symmetry. So symmetry is in which you can divide an organism into two or more than two equal halves, wherein each half will be the mirror image of each other. So based on that, in flowers also there is radial symmetry, there is bilateral symmetry, and also there is asymmetrical. So what are these? We shall study. So if the flowers can be divided into two equal halves in different planes, then it is considered to be radial symmetry. The best example is mustard, datura, and chilli. So such flowers which exhibit radial symmetry, they are also called as actinomorphic flowers. So if you see this flower here, if I draw a line exactly from the center on any different planes, the flower will cut into equal halves. So such flower are called as actinomorphic flowers. That is, they are called as the radial symmetry, and also the flowers are called as the actinomorphic flower. So the best examples are mustard, datura, and chilli. So next, moving on to zygomorphic flowers. Those flowers which exhibit bilateral symmetry is called as zygomorphic flower. So in the case of bilateral symmetry, like how in animals, say for example in leech. So if you consider this to be a leech, if I just draw a line or pass a line in the center from one end of the leech to the other end, and when I observe the two halves of the leech, one half of the leech will exactly look like the mirror image or exact copy of the other half. So such flowers are called as the zygomorphic flowers. So flowers, they can be divided into two similar halves in one vertical plane. So I am drawing one vertical line here. So, and after drawing this line, if we observe, one half of the flower will look exactly the mirror image or exactly the same copy or exactly similar to the other half. So therefore, it is called as zygomorphic flowers. The best example is pea, gulmohar flower, then flowers of the bee plant, and cassia flowers. So next, moving on to asymmetrical arrangement. So what is asymmetry? Any number of lines you draw in any axis or any plane, the flowers cannot be cut into equal halves. That is, those flowers which do not exhibit a symmetry are called as asymmetrical. They are also called as irregular flowers. So those flowers which are asymmetrical are called as irregular flowers. So here the flowers, they cannot be divided into two similar halves by any vertical plane passing through the center. The best example is canna. Here I have taken the example of bird of paradise, wherein you can see if I draw a vertical line here, any number of vertical line, the one half of the flower, so one half is not at all resembling or looking similar like the other half, right? So that is why it is asymmetrical or it is irregular in nature. So next, moving on to the types of flowers based on the floral appendages, like how many floral parts or how many floral whorls are present in the flower. Based on that, the flowers are of three types, that is they are trimerous, tetramerous, and one more, it is pentamerous. So what is the strimerous flowers? So those flowers exhibiting three whorls, that is they will have three parts in a flower. So such flowers are called as trimerous flowers. And those flowers having four whorls, that is four parts in a flower, it is called as tetramerous. And also pentamerous. So those flowers exhibiting five whorls in a or five parts in a flower, it is called as pentamerous flowers. So based on the number of whorls that are present, based on whether it is trimerous, tetramerous or pentamerous, based on that also the classification of the flowers into different species is done. So next, moving on to the types of flowers based on the bracts. So what are these bracts? Bract are leaf-like structures, but are they leaves? No, they are not leaves. They just look like leaves. They are nothing but the reduced leaf-like structures that are found at the base of the pedicel. So what is the pedicel? Pedicel is the stalk of the flower, or this is the pedicel. So at the base of the pedicel, whether there is the presence of leaf-like structures or reduced leaf-like structure, which means nothing but whether there is presence or bracts or not, based on that the flowers are classified as bracteate flowers and ebracteate flowers. So ebracteate means no bracts, bracteate means having bracts. So can you see here at the pedicel, at the base of the pedicel, we can see here leaf-like structures. These are nothing but the leaves themselves get reduced and they get modified into bracts. So these are also green in color and they also serve the process of photosynthesis because they have chlorophyll pigment. So here you can see I have taken the example of hibiscus. So in hibiscus, at the base of the pedicel, almost at the region where the pedicel ends, there the bracts will be present, that is the small reduced leaf-like structures will be present. So if in such cases we can call the flower to be bracteate. And those flowers, so I have taken the example of a flower here to study or to explain ebracteate. So in this flower, that is in datura, this is datura flower. So in datura flower, as you can see, at the base of the pedicel, there is the sepal being present, but nowhere bracts are there, right? It is easy to differentiate between the two diagrams here. Here there is no bracts present, so therefore it is ebracteate. So flowers are classified into different species based on whether the bract is present, that is based on whether it is bracteate, or based on whether the bract is absent, that is whether it is ebracteate. So therefore the flowers are bracteate flowers and ebracteate flowers. So next, moving on to the classification of flowers based on the position of the calyx, the position of the corolla and the andressium. So how the calyx, corolla and the andressium. So what is the andressium? It is the male reproductive part of the flower, which is nothing but the stamen. So based on how the sepals are arranged, that is how the calyx is arranged, how the petal, that is the corolla, is arranged, and how the andressium, that is the stamen, is arranged. Based on that, the flowers are classified into three types. So here, how they are arranged with respect to the ovary on the thalamus. So in which position they are placed when we compare the ovary and the thalamus, in which position these parts of the flower, that is the calyx, corolla and the andressium, is based or placed. Based on that, the flowers are of three types. One is hypogynous flower, the other one is perigynous flower, and the third one is the epigynous flower. So we shall study about each of them one by one. So first with hypogynous flower. So here in hypogynous flower, the gynoecium occupies the highest position. So not just the andressium, here based on all the parts of a flower, how they are placed on the thalamus and with respect to the ovary. So here I'll consider the sepal, the gynoecium, which is nothing but the ovary, and also the stamens as well as the corolla or the petals. So first we shall write what the sepal and the petal are here. So this is the thalamus. So this is the thalamus. And then after the thalamus, on the thalamus is located the sepals. So sepals are also called as the calyx. Then comes the corolla or the petal. Corolla or petal. After that comes the stamens, which is nothing but the andressium, and then comes the gynoecium, which is nothing but the female reproductive part, that is the pistil or the carpel. So based on the arrangement on the thalamus, we shall see. So here gynoecium, can you see, it is hypo, it is placed above the thalamus, and from the base of the gynoecium all the other parts of a flower are arising, are coming out, right? When we are talking about the types of hypogynous, perigynous or epigynous flower, we have to concentrate on the position of the ovary, that is the gynoecium or the carpel. So here you can see, so what is the ovary? The basal part of the flower that is bulged, or basal part of the gynoecium, sorry, not the flower, the basal part of the gynoecium that is bulged. So this part is actually the ovary. So this is the ovary. So now look at the ovary. So the basal part, that is the gynoecium. So it is present above all the other parts. Can you see here? So here the gynoecium actually ends here. The ovary is present here. It ends here. So below the ovary, all the other parts, can you see? The sepals are present below the ovary. The sepals are present below the ovary, the petals are also present below the ovary, and the stamens or the andressium are also present below the ovary. And therefore what happens? Because they are present, so if this is the ovary, the petal, the ovary ends here, the petal is arising from the base of the ovary. Even the sepal is also arising from the base of the ovary. Even the andressium, that is the stamen, is also arising from the base of the ovary. Therefore what happens? The ovary is at the top position now. Why? Because all the other parts are coming from below the ovary. So such a condition is called as hypogynous flower. So the gynoecium, it actually occupies the highest position, while the other parts are situated below the gynoecium or below the ovary. Therefore it is a superior ovary now. It is a superior ovary. So those flowers having a superior ovary are called as hypogynous flowers. So this condition is usually found in mustard flowers, China rose, which is nothing but hibiscus, and also the brinjal flowers. So next, moving on to perigynous flower. So in perigynous flower also, now I am considering the ovary. So here what happens? Peri means peripheral. Somewhere in between it is occurring here. Neither the ovary is completely present down, nor it is present in the upper position. It is present somewhere in between. So from half of the ovary, can you see here? The sepals are arising, then the petals are arising, then the stamens are arising. Therefore, it is perigynous. So the gynoecium is situated in center of the other parts of the flower. It is not situated completely down nor completely above, right? It is situated exactly in center, and from that center of the ovary, other parts of the flower are arising. So therefore, gynoecium is situated in the center and other parts of the flower are located on the rim. So this is the rim, that is the periphery. It is located on the rim of the ovary, and that is rim of the thalamus. It is located at the rim. So this is the rim of the thalamus, exactly from the thalamus. So the thalamus covers half of the ovary. So from that half where the thalamus ends, from there the other reproductive parts of the flower or other parts of the flower are arising. Therefore, the ovary is half inferior, right? It is half inferior. It is neither superior nor it is completely inferior. Therefore, it is half inferior. So such flowers are usually seen in plum, rose and peaches. So the best example is plum, rose and peaches. So they are perigynous. Here the ovary is semi-inferior or it is half inferior. So such flowers are perigynous flowers. So next, moving on to epigynous flowers. Here, the margin of the thalamus grows upwards. Can you see here? Here, the margin of the thalamus grew up to the half of the ovary. Here, the margin of the thalamus grows upwards above the ovary. So, can you see here? This is the thalamus. So, the margin of the thalamus, it grows above the ovary and it completely engulfs or it completely covers the ovary, and then from where the thalamus ends, the margin, there the other parts of the flower, that is the stamens, that is the andressium, then the petal and the sepal will arise. So, therefore, now the ovary is completely inferior because from the top of the ovary, all the other parts are arising. Therefore, the ovary is at the down. So, say for example, this is the ovary. The thalamus has grown beyond the ovary. From this region, the stamens, the petals and the sepals will arise. Therefore, now what happened? The other parts of the flower, this represents the other parts of the flower, that is the stamen, petal and the sepal. They arise from the top, and the ovary, this is the ovary, it is at the base now. So that is nothing but inferior ovary. So here, margin of thalamus, it will grow upward and it will completely enclose or it will completely cover the ovary, and from there where the thalamus ends, the margin of the thalamus, from there, from the top of the ovary, the other parts of the flower will arise. So, such flowers are nothing but epigynous. Epi means the ovary is inferior. Hypo means the ovary is superior and the other parts of the flower are inferior. In the case of epigynous, the ovary is inferior, other parts of the flower will be superior. So, this condition of epigynous flower is usually found in guava, in cucumber, and also it is present in the ray florets of sunflower. So, sunflower, say for example, if this is the sunflower, in between the petals there will be small petals like this, very small tiny florets. So these are nothing but, so if this is a sunflower, you might have noticed in between there will be very small florets. So that is nothing but the ray florets. So ray florets of sunflower, there also we can find this particular epigynous condition. So based on the position of the ovary and the other parts of the flower, that is the stamens, the petals and the sepals, the flower is classified into three types, that is hypogynous flower, perigynous flower and one more is epigynous flower. So next, moving on to based on the calyx. So based on what is calyx? Calyx is nothing but the sepal, right? So based on the sepal, flowers are of two types, that is based on whether the sepal is fused. So this is sepal. So here again it is sepal. There is a mistake. Sorry for that. So here there is a so sepals, based on the sepal. If it is fused, it is called as gamo. Gamo means fusion. So what is fusing here? Sepals are fusing. Therefore it is gamosepalous. So gamosepalous means the sepals are fused. So can you see here? I have taken the example of a hibiscus bud. So can you see here? This is the bract. So bract is present in hibiscus. I had given you the example earlier. So this is the sepal. So can you see here? The sepal is fused. So each base of the sepal, it is fused to one another. They are fused. So that is why it is called as gamosepalous. And in those flowers in which the sepals are free, it is polysepalous, means they are not fused. They are free, poly. So here I have taken the example of rose bud here. So here you can see easily there is no fusion between the sepals. Both are free at the base. So therefore it is polysepalous. Polysepalous. So easily you can distinguish between taking example of rose and hibiscus. So rose it is polysepalous and hibiscus it is gamosepalous. So based on that, if the sepal is fused, it will be called a gamosepalous flower, and if the sepal is free, it will be called as a polysepalous flower. So next, moving on to the corolla. So again here, based on whether the petal is united or free, it is called as gamopetalous and polypetalous. Like how we called it as gamosepalous and polysepalous for the sepals, similarly for petals it will be, so corolla means nothing but it is petal, right? So it will be gamopetalous and polypetalous. Petalis. So Gamopetalis, the petals are united. So can you see here? Again, I've taken the example of Datura here. So you can see the petals are fused. So at the base, all the petals will be fused. So it has fused petals. The petals are not free, fused petals. So it is Gamopetalis. And here the petals are free. Can you see here? One petal, it is separate from the other. There is a gap between each of the petals. They are free. It is like as if it is torn. So it is free. So such petals are free. Therefore, it is polypetalous. So based on the fusion of the petals, whether they have fused or whether they have united, it is called as Gamopetalous, and if the petals are free, it is called as polypetalous. So based on this condition also, the classification of the flowering plants is done. So next, I told you about petals. Again, based on the arrangement of the petals. So arrangement of the petal is called as estivation, or the arrangement of the corolla. Corolla means nothing but it is another name for petal. So based on how the petals are arranged in a flower, based on that also, which is nothing but estivation. So based on estivation, so what is estivation? Estivation is nothing but the arrangement of the petals or the corolla in a flower. So based on that, the petals are of 4 types, that is the flowers are of 4 types: valvate estivation, imbricate estivation, twisted estivation, and vexillary, or vexillary is also called as papillonaceous estivation. So first we will consider valvate estivation. So in some of the flowering plants, so not just the petals, even estivation can be considered for sepals as well. That is the arrangement of the sepals also, that is the calyx. So here either the sepals or the petals, in the case of valvate estivation, in a whirl, they just touch one another at the margin without overlapping. So can you see here? This is petal 1, petal 2, petal 3, petal 4 and the petal 5. So they are arranged in such a way that they are arranged close to each other, but they are not overlapping with one another. Can you see here? This is called as overlapping. This petal, say for example, I'll number it here: 1, 2, first petal, second petal, third, fourth and fifth petal. So the first petal or the second petal and the first petal are overlapping with each other. They are not present in one margin. But this, can you see, they are present exactly in one circle, one margin, right? But only thing is they are not overlapping. So those sepals or petals in a whirl of flower, when they are arranged in one particular margin, but they do not overlap with one another, such type of estivation is called as, means they are not, one petal is not placed over the other, they are not overlapping. It is just like overlapping means, say consider these to be the 2 petals. So if one end of the petal is placed like this, it is overlapping. Can you see? This petal is front and this petal is overlapping on the other, or this one is overlapping. But here what happens? They just placed like this. They are not overlapping with one another. So that is nothing but valvate estivation. So there is no overlapping. Next comes the imbricate estivation. Here the margins of the sepals or the petals, they overlap with one another, but in one particular direction they will overlap. That is, here in clockwise direction overlapping will take place. Not like this will overlap and then somewhere this will overlap on top of this. No, it is in clockwise overlapping will take place. So what happens here? 1 and 2 are overlapping, 2 and 3 is overlapping, then 3 and 4 is overlapping, and 5 and 1 is again overlapping. So just in one direction, if one petal is overlapping like this, the other one will also overlap like this, the other one also like this. So in one particular direction, the overlapping of the petals will take place. So such is called as the imbricate estivation. So I forgot to tell, in valvate estivation, the best example is Calotropis. So in Calotropis flowers, valvate estivation is usually seen, and imbricate estivation is usually seen in Cassia and Gulmohar flowers. So this is about imbricate estivation. Valvate, no overlapping. Imbricate, overlapping of the petals is there, but in one single direction, either clockwise or anti-clockwise. Not clockwise, anti-clockwise, mixture will not happen there. Next is twisted estivation. In twisted estivation, one margin of the appendage or the flower or the petal or the sepal overlaps to the next one. So here, can you see here? Here one margin will overlap with this. So this margin is overlapping with this one with this with this with this, and this one with this. So each margin overlaps with one another. So that is why it is called as twisted. It is like twisted. So this and this are overlapping. This one and this one is overlapping. This margin and this margin is overlapping. This one and this one and this one. It is overlapping. So that is nothing but twisted estivation. So here, imbricate estivation, what happens? In one particular direction it is overlapping. So if the overlapping starts in this direction, then the overlapping of the margin of the petal will take place in one direction itself. But here it is not like that. It will overlap to the next petal. So one petal will overlap with the other, the next one with the next one with the next one, like that. So that is like, it looks like a twisted arrangement. So the best example is hibiscus. So hibiscus flower, that is China rose, then the flower of the vegetable plant, that is lady's finger, and also cotton flower. So these are examples for twisted estivation. Next, moving on to vexillary or the papillonaceous estivation. So in vexillary or papillonaceous estivation, here 5 petals will be present. So what are the 5 petals? 1, 2, 3. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So 5 petals will be present. So the largest one will be the standard petal. So the first petal, which I have now numbered 1, no, this will be the largest petal. So largest petal, it will overlap the 2 lateral petals. So these, the second and the third petal, these both are the lateral petals. Lateral petals. So the largest petal is overlapping. Can you see here? This is overlapping with this. This is overlapping with this. So the largest petal is overlapping with the 2 lateral petals, and these lateral petals, they look like a wing. That is why they are also called as the wing petals. So they are overlapping with the lateral petals, and the lateral petals are overlapping with the 2 anterior petals. Anterior means at the base, at the tip. So these are the 2 anterior, that is the number which I have given 4 and 5, no, that is the anterior petals here, anterior petal. So such a condition is called as the vexillary or papillonaceous estivation. So these anterior petals are also called as the keel. So what happens here? 5 petals will actually be there. The tall also had the 5 petals. Here also 5 petals are there. Among the 5 petals, one is the main petal, which is the largest petal, and it is also called as a standard petal. That one large petal, at the margin, it will overlap with the 2 lateral petals, which are smaller than the largest petal, and then the anterior petals, which are also called as the keel, they will overlap with the lateral petals. So these are the smallest petals that are present. So such a condition is called as vexillary or papillonaceous estivation. Why? Because vexillary or papillonaceous, it is also called as papillonaceous estivation because it looks like a butterfly. The lateral petals are also called as the wing petals. So therefore, since it looks like a papillon means butterfly. So papillonaceous means it looks like a butterfly. So these are, so based on the type of arrangement of the petals, the flowers can be classified into the 4 types, that is valvet estivation. So what is estivation? Estivation is the arrangement of this corolla or the petals. So based on that, it can be valvet, imbricate, then twisted and vexillary or papillonaceous. So I hope you understood this subject well today. So in today's session, we had studied how the inflorescence. So what is an inflorescence? And based on inflorescence, it is of 2 types, cymose and racemose inflorescence. And we also studied how flowers are classified based on the arrangement of the floral organs, whether the floral organs are fused, whether they are free, and how the petals are arranged. Based on all that, the flowers are classified into different forms. So I hope you understood this session well. In the next coming session, we shall study about the reproductive organ of the flower, that is the gynoecium and the andressium. And also we can study the position of ovary, that is how inside the ovary, how the ovules are placed, that is the placentation, all that we shall study. So in the next coming session, we will meet again. Thank you.